So everybody, thank you so much for coming to hear me, and I hope we can have a very peaceful conversation today. Now, particularly for those of us who believe in a loving and caring God, or who believe in a benevolent universe, or who believe in both, there's always that feeling that the world was created to be a peaceful place. Look at the colors out there, the blues, the greens, soothing, gentle colors. You've got the soft blue of the sky and the gentle colors of all of the flowers, the browns of the earth, and the reds of the earth, and the mountains. You live here, you know what this is like, so I don't have to tell you too much. I live in Washington State. It's gorgeous. Every aspect of this planet that we live in seems to just absolutely guarantee that we are in a peaceful world. But if we look closer, what we see is that there's a grievous wound in our peaceful world. It's humankind. The highest creation that we know of is in discord. It seems like there's never been a significant amount of time that there hasn't been war. And history looks like just the compilation of war stories, and peace is just the pause for breath between the last ceasefire and the next call to arms. So historians proclaim the first major conflict of the past century the war to end all wars. The savagery, the losses, the destruction of life, the traumatization of the spirit, all of those things seem to be warning. This universal great war must never happen again. But as we all know, that this incredible war just became World War I. And a second war followed that made it dwarfed in its ferocity. And then came a third conflict, and a fourth, and a fifth. So hopeful people looked at the 21st century. Remember all those songs? This is the dawn, I'm not going to sing, no. This is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. This is the long looked for era of peace. So everybody was like, oh, 2000, we know if we can make it, we'll be peaceful forever. But just 9 months into the conflict, into this peaceful age, we had 9/11. And again, people picked up their arms and went to war. The conflict that's going on now is unprecedented. And despite the best efforts of all of the pundits and the politicians and the strategists, there's no solution forthcoming. There's no end in sight for this struggle. And around the world, the wars and the rumors of wars continue to rumble. Now, it's easy for us to sit here on this nice little campus on a nice day in May and just think, oh, that's all so far away. I don't have to think about it. This has nothing to do with me. Right? So let's look closer to home. America has never been a peaceful place, and certainly not since the European settlers reached our shores. Remember all those wonderful stories you had at Thanksgiving when you were a little child? Did you make those little pointed hats and the little turkeys that you make with 5 fingers? Remember all that stuff you did? But we didn't go far enough, because the Wampanoag natives who helped the settlers discover a way that they could survive the first winter, within 3 years, 90% of them were dead, either from disease or from those very people that they had helped turning on them and deciding, this should be our land. These people are savage, and they don't know what to do with it. The early settlers ultimately tried to enslave the Wampanoag and the other tribes. And when they failed to be able to do that, because the Wampanoag were not into slavery, they went to the shores of Africa and imported African people. Now, de jure, or legal slavery has been outlawed since 1865, but we still live in an era of racial bias, and that impedes the forward movement of some 12% of America's population. As for the natives, although they were here first, they were pushed west, and their numbers significantly decimated. One is a citizen of a tribe, or one is a US citizen. But tribes are considered domestic dependent nations, and the status of Native Americans seems frequently to be in flux with the US government. Latin Americans, particularly those of Mexican heritage, languish on this nation's borders, awaiting their fate, as conditions in their native countries reportedly grow more and more intolerable. People of Caucasoid origins, also known as white people, have a long history of struggle against each other. So a great war dividing kindred from kindred was fought in this country. And do not delude yourself into thinking it was a war for the purpose of freeing the slaves. That was an economic war. And one way of destabilizing the South was to bring independence to the people that they were using for economic means. The Wild Wild West, too, an age of such lawlessness that one could lose his life over a card game or an offhand comment, or the Depression, where children were sometimes left on the streets because the parents could no longer support them. And so they would take off and they would just leave the children there to their own fate. So we look at these things and we say, that was long ago. You're talking about long ago stuff. But there are still rumblings of discontent as the inequities of our society persist. But how does this concern you? You know, it's not the 1800s, it's not the 1900s. Those times are gone. Well, let's look closer at the day-to-day relationships we all encounter in our communities. What is your relationship with your boss? The person in the cubicle next to yours? How about that guy? He's out there on the highway and he drives like he despises you. What about that lady down at the motor vehicles when you go down there who just looks at you like, why are you here? You disgust me. I've got a phone call. Excuse me. Myra? Oh, honey. How are you? No, I wasn't there. I don't know what happened last week. Are you kidding? He did that? Come on, you've all been there. You know that woman. I bet she works here. How do you regard people of a different class, or a different race, or a different religion? Can you maintain a spirit of respect for for the humans behind a cause, even when your ideals and your practices clash with theirs? The threats to peace intrude into our daily lives. We recoil from the stories of the school shootings, the drive-bys, and the random attacks on others. Terrorism has become so persistent in this society that we find ourselves looking over our shoulder whenever we are in a crowd. Don't worry, I've got your back. I'm watching that door. Even in our homes, we're not always able to settle into a state of contentment. Violence streams in from our TVs and the internet. It spills over into the relationship with our spouses, our family members, our neighbors, and our friends. More and more in my practice, I hear about people that don't like to go out. And they've got all kinds of security, spyware, spy cams. You go to their houses, it's like being at an armed camp. So after a while, you don't go to their houses. They're guarding against some yet unprovoked attack. We have people that, because of some nameless fear, something that's never happened, because of the daily stressors of life, they can't sleep, even with the light on, even with the prescription drug, even sleeping next to their spouse. In fact, the mere presence of a spouse or significant other can be so stressful, if not more so, than living alone. Conflict has crept over the threshold and into the bedroom, between the sheets, and is lying next to you. As one man said in therapy, when I first got with my wife, I loved her so much, I wanted to eat her up. 10 years later, I wish I had. So that beautiful woman, that handsome hunk of a man, remember them? Something happened to them. Suddenly they've changed. Their attitudes have changed. Their beliefs have changed. Their interests have changed. Their activity levels, their waistlines have changed. Surely, this is not the person you knew 10 years ago, 20 years ago. Young people are looking at me like, oh no, he'll never change. He's so cute. We'll see. Every encounter seems to turn into a conflict sometimes, or a cold silence. Every minute seems to bring about more tension. We hear that the national divorce rate is now around 42 to 45%. And we say, ooh-wee, it used to be 66%. Why is it so low? Fewer people are getting married. They're saying, I don't want to live with some person who's going to be problems. You see those t-shirts? The more I see of men, the more I love my dog. Nothing's wrong with that. I don't even want to go there. 41% of first marriages end in divorce. 60% of second marriages end in divorce. 73% of third marriages end in divorce. Who's the actor, the one that had the 40-day marriage? Nicolas Cage. 40 days? What happened during those 40 days? He went from, oh, she's wonderful, to, oh, get her out of here. The average length of time is about 8 years for a marriage, currently, in the United States. So in this kind of an atmosphere of fear and instability, how can we live, let alone prosper? Well, the other day I was in Los Angeles where people were just taking down signs that read, "Peace begins with me," because a great woman, Dr. Hak Jahan Moon, who had been touring the United States with a message calling people to take charge of their lives and environments through a return to their original ideals of love and goodness centered on God, had just presented in Los Angeles to an audience of over 5,000 people. I missed it, but I heard it was an informative and very inspiring talk. I had heard a lot about Dr. Moon and her husband, the late Reverend Sun Myung Moon. This couple, over the last 60 years, has dedicated their lives to service to humanity. Among the projects they founded was the Women's Federation for World Peace, which is now in its 27th year. This organization has done amazing work through the sponsorship of schools in Africa, the healing of differences between people through bridge ceremonies, and all kinds of work and worthy programs. I'll refer to a couple of them soon. Of the greatest value has been their exemplification of the theme, "Peace begins with me," which calls all people, especially women of all ages, but men don't feel left out, to tap the greatness inside themselves and find that place of service in a world that needs healing so badly. When we speak of great women, we usually think of the heroines of our time, the Princess Dianas, the Mother Teresas, the Dr. Maya Angelou's, the Susan B. Anthony's, the Sacagaweas, the Shirley Chisholms, the Sally Rides. But there are also a host of women whose names may have escaped us. These are ordinary women who catapulted themselves almost accidentally into fame because they could not put up with an injustice or they saw a glaring need. These are women like Elizabeth Wanamaker Peretrovich. She's a Native American from the Tlingit tribe. She and her family moved to Juneau, Alaska in the 1940s. And to her horror, she saw signs everywhere saying, "No dogs, no Indians." And her children were barred from attendance at the local all-white schools. She didn't want to start trouble. She wanted her children to have more opportunities than were afforded Native people in that time. She took her case for equality all the way to the Alaska State Legislature. And when a dissenting senator said to her, "Who are these people, barely out of savagery, who want to associate with us whites with 5,000 years of recorded history?" I don't think he had read very much. Her response was, "I would not have expected that I, who am barely out of savagery, would have to remind a gentleman with 5,000 years of recorded history behind him of our Bill of Rights." She won her case. Remember, Mrs. Peretrovich, her commemorative U.S. coin will be in your pockets next year. Or recall Rosa Parks, an African-American day laborer who refused to yield her seat to a white man on a public bus. People go, what? In a time when African-Americans had to pay their fares at the front of the bus and then get off the bus to reboard at the rear door and sit in the colored section, one was not allowed to sit across from a white person. You couldn't sit on that aisle. So when the overflow of passengers landed one white man in her row, 4 black people had to go get off the bus and stand in the overcrowded Negro section. Mrs. Parks refused, and she was arrested, but her disobedience resulted in the integration of all local as well as interstate transportation. She denied reports that she didn't get up because she was tired. I was tired of that system, she said. She is also the first woman to have her statue placed in the rotunda of the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. And then there is a lady whose name is Ann DeVere. I had no idea who she was until last week. She is a global visibility catalyst. So I meet a lot of people who say, I can never do anything because I don't speak the language, I have problems, I don't know. This lady came to the US from a third world country when she was 13 years old. She spoke no English. She never went to college. But she went into a factory and was problem solving very quickly. She could look at a situation and realize how to make it better. And some of the places that you shop now are able to go forward and prosper because of her hard work. She had a friend that wanted to get a job in media, so she went out and did research to find out how that should happen. And it opened up a whole new world with her. So now she teaches people how to succeed in whatever their vocation is. And she does seminars on succeeding. And I took one last week through Women's Federation, and it just knocked me out. So, where does that leave you? Well, the saddest thing I ever hear is people who say, I'm just an ordinary woman. But these are all women. They're all ordinary women. They woke up ordinary one day and wound up changing the world a little bit more for the better. You could be one such woman. Because you see, peace does not just begin with me. It also begins with you. It may be a bit disconcerting that you could possibly be the linchpin for harmony and unity in your immediate surroundings. But as these young ladies sang this evening, it is the man and the woman in the mirror that can change its ways and make a better place by looking at themselves and making that change. Especially women say to me, look, I got things to do. My life is busy. You're telling me to go out and change the world? I gotta take care of my kitchen floor. It's been warping and I gotta pull it up and call the guy from Sears and he's gonna come in and show me how to do this and that. And then I've gotta get that weird kind of smell that's going on my shower and take care of baking for my little kids, Girl Scouts, and I am just too busy. I do not have time to do one more thing. So yes, beyond your world of making beds and doing laundry, getting out on the freeway, driving to school or to work, beyond your stop at Whole Foods, nuking your dinner, putting out the garbage, walking the dog, kicking off your shoes and settling down to watch Netflix, there's a world where regular people can become amazing. That change may be a mere ripple in their immediate pond, but it can grow into a tidal wave. So the saddest words I hear when I ask a woman, what do you do for a living? She says, oh, I'm just a housewife. I'm just a mother. But one does not have to be a Marie Curie, discover all kinds of things about radiation. She doesn't have to be an Elizabeth Blackwell who fights to become the first doctor, female doctor, to bring about healing in this world. Mothers, do you know who is drinking at your breast? Do you know who is scribbling on your walls? Is it a future peacemaker, a dynamic force for good? You influence your child. You are the catalyst for what your child's greatness will be. Your child learns values and ethics at your need. Your child learns the knowledge that she or he will carry into the world. You model what is virtuous and what is not in your home. What does that mean? It means that the first piece you have to find is in yourself. We carry so much within ourselves: mistrust, pain, shame, feelings of inferiority, hurts from childhood, slights, misunderstandings, and alienation from family, wounds from ill-fated relationships, sufferings for things that never could be. So where does our healing begin? It comes from within. It comes from realizing I'm okay. I'm good enough. I am a diamond in the rough. With a little polishing, I can shine in the world. I hear it all the time, and I will admit it. I've said it too. I'm too fat. My doctor told me my body mass index should be no higher than 25. I got mine down to 26.7 last month, and then I went to a birthday party. New kind. Yes, I need a little polishing, but I also need to remember that my body mass used to be 31. Mildly overweight has come down to well-nourished. More exercise, except of the arm and the jaw muscles, and a little more exercise this way. We all know the formula for weight control. I've got people holding up 10s all over the place. Okay, thank you. And even though we know that, we still struggle. Or we go to the opposite. We deny ourselves even the essentials that we need in order to stay healthy. We want to meet some unattainable skinny girl class. This works mostly with women, not so much with men. Years ago, I was a reporter, and I had the privilege of meeting and interviewing a woman named Leslie Lawson. Maybe you've never heard of Leslie Lawson, but you have. She was also known as Twiggy. And she was the woman that launched that emaciated look. She told me that she hated that look. She felt it was unnatural. And she was relieved to leave her modeling career after only a handful of years and become a real woman. So now she's kind of round and she's happy with herself. As for me, I found a way to solve my weight problem. I found a fatter doctor. By the way, did you know that Marilyn Monroe wore a size 14 dress? I'm a size 10. I'm way ahead of Marilyn Monroe. Hey. So what about our fear and our guilt? All the therapy in the world cannot help us if we cannot or will not forgive ourselves. And if we cannot take responsibility for what is of our making and let go of certain feelings that we have about other people. Self-pity, along with blaming and accusing, is addiction. It is as addictive as drugs or alcohol. Maybe more so, because I've got to get up to go get drugs or alcohol, but I can sit in the corner and get all of the self-pity I want. We can use our feelings of not good enough to deny ourselves of all the things around us. How do we treat people in our world? How do we treat our parents? How do we treat our significant others? How do we treat our children? How do we treat our coworkers and our colleagues? How do we get along with our classmates? How do we get along with people in our carpool? People on those special projects with us? And how can we go about taking advantage of the myriad opportunities for healing that interaction with others affords? It is said that by the time we reach our seniority, we will have experienced 171,000 potential psychic insults. We're talking about age 18, and it's probably gone up now thanks to cyberbullying and a bunch of other stuff. So it's not surprising that we anticipate slights, even perceive them when they are not there. Most of us expect to be hurt in some way. And we enter into dealing with other people anticipating that they are going to attack us. Case in point, I took a position at a psychiatric facility some years ago as the leader of their adult team. I was new to the town, I was new to the facility, and very anxious as to how I was going to be received. So some of the people that I jumped over were on my team. One lady in particular stood there looking at me. And I thought to myself, why is she looking at me? Why is she staring at me? What's the matter with me? Is something out of place? No, she's staring at me. She has a problem with me. Is it because I'm a woman? And then you go all crazy. Is it because I'm black? Can she see like the native in me? Can she see this? Can she see that? My husband worked in the same place, so he went over to her and he said, how come you're staring at my wife? And she said, you know, in my off time, I'm a seamstress, and I just bought this new bolt of fabric, and I thought, wow, I bet I could make something for her. I'm sizing her up to figure out kind of a welcome gift. I want to make something for her, a nice dress or something. She and I became best friends. Actually, she and I became family. We're close. And that would never have happened if I had gone with my thinking. So we have so many opportunities that we lose for relationship because we assume things that have absolutely no basis in reality. We can globalize an injury, even a vicarious one. So we all long for relationship, but too frequently, we run our would-be significant others through such a battery of hoops and tripwires that we make the relationship intolerable. The need to be right often precludes the need to be sympathetic and understanding. The need to get mine sometimes jumps way out in front of the desire to give and to share. Somehow we take on the attitude that we are superior to our spouses and we treat them like the inferiors they are. And that can send them scurrying out of our presence, or at least make them silent and unresponsive, lest they say the wrong thing and we kill them. Many spouses sit before us, declaring that they feel cheated by their significant others, who make an effort to get their way by manipulating, punishing, shaming, withholding, nagging, or upbraiding, rather than reasoning, listening, bargaining, and coming to conclusions amenable to them both. So, the nature of globalization is that if one police officer is bad, they must all be bad. If one white person or black person or Asian person looks askance at us, they must all be eyeing us with suspicion. If one Mexican has committed a criminal act, they must all be criminals. If one man has broken our hearts, they must all be heartbreakers. If one woman has been unfaithful, then why trust any of them? Bigotry, prejudice, intolerance, all of these feelings have their roots in our taking the negative behaviors of one individual and describing to every other member of their racial, religious, cultural, gender, economic, academic, or other groups that they may be identified with. So how can peace begin with you? First and foremost, find inner peace. Know who you are, what triggers you, what delights you, and what you want in life. Set your goals, figure out what you need, anticipate the possible hurdles you're going to have to overcome, and set about being the best you possible. If I had more time, I'd tell you about my yaya here, but we'll let that go. Once you know yourself, study those of significance around you. What do they need? What do they have to offer you? What do you have to offer them? How can you enrich their lives in the most non-invasive, non-hostile takeover way? How can you help them to become your allies and your advocates? How can you make your life with them in it a blissful life? Come to know your community. Who is it? Who's in it? How do you feel about those in it that are different from you? Why do you feel that way? How much of your belief is from experience and how much is from hearsay, the morning news, or somebody else's experience? Be ready to discover the greatness of those around you. Look at people through new eyes. Consider the negative experiences you might have had with other people. Why might they have occurred? And how can you prevent them from occurring again? And once you are feeling peaceful, what can you do to make your community better? Recently, several young men became concerned about homeless people hanging around their college and poking through the trash cans. These young men were not part of a fraternity or anybody special, but when they found out that these people were looking for food, they started bringing an extra sandwich, bag of chips, whatever. And they started something that has caught on in many campuses called #lunchbag. Some of the Women's Federation ladies have taken their old handbags and, they're nice handbags, but, last season, women know what that's all about. And we fill them up with things, like maybe a nice pair of earrings, a bracelet, some nice socks, a scarf, something pretty that a lady that is not of the best means might not be able to afford. #handbag. Or a friend of ours, Reverend Flowers, started noticing that the children in his community didn't have pencils and pens to go back to school. So he started in his park a little back to school thing. He asked some of the local businessmen, hey, can you maybe donate some pencils, some notebooks? And they started doing that. And then people started coming to hang out, and people showed up that could play music, and maybe the next year some of the community people started cooking, and that became a major thing. #bookbag. Somewhere in you is a hashtag. You just have to figure out where it is. So, what is your conduit for making peace? It doesn't take a great deal of money. It doesn't take incredible vision. It's just doing random acts of kindness that you can do every day. The smile you give your bus driver, the phone call you make to a shut-in, the listening ear you give to a coworker or a fellow student going through hard times. It's the clarification you make when somebody does something hurtful or wrong to someone else. It's the half second you take to pick up a scrap of trash carelessly discarded on a city street. It's the prayer you raise for those that struggle for equilibrium in a world they have not gained mastery of. You don't need a cape. You don't need a mask or a big letter on your chest. all you need, all any of us need, to be able to look up one day and discover that the kingdom of peace, heaven on earth, the ideal world of love and righteousness we so long for, has already dawned around us. All anyone needs to be able to experience that is a heart. So I want to close by reciting a poem. I hope I remember it. It's a song. I'm not singing. I've got that. It's called Let There Be Peace on Earth. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Let there be peace on earth, the peace that was meant to be. I'll clean it up a little bit in the politically correct. With God as our father and mother. Siblings all are we. Let us walk with each other in perfect harmony. Let peace begin with me. Let this be the moment, now. With every step I take, let this be my solemn vow, to take each moment and live each moment in peace eternally. And please read this last line with me. Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. And if you can make that your solemn pledge, I want to see your hands. Beautiful. Thank you.